Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Mind Movement Health Podcast. I'm super excited today. I have a returning guest to the podcast. You guys may have listened to our first podcast interview. If you haven't, I will definitely link that up in the show notes so you can. But Dr. Shivani Gupta, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, today we're going to dive into your new book, which I'm super excited to talk about. And when you were last on, we talked about Ayurveda and inflammation, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that. So, before we do, for anyone that didn't listen to our first podcast interview, can you just introduce yourself?
For sure. I'm Shivani. I have been studying Ayurveda for pretty much my whole life. I grew up in an Indian family where my grandma always used to heal me with spices and herbs. And I ended up being so sick throughout my childhood, taking way too many antibiotics, that by the time I got to college, I realized, you know what? There has to be a different way. When it comes to my health, I cannot keep doing this. And so I asked my parents, can we go study Ayurveda? We're in this land of Ayurveda in India when we were visiting. And so we ended up traveling all through India, going to all the detox centers. I sat at the feet of the gurus and they showed me Ayurveda really works. And I thought, I need to bring this wisdom to the West. How come in the West, when I go to the doctor, all their whole toolkit is antibiotics? When you go to Ayurveda, there's a much bigger, more profound lifestyle toolkit there when it comes to building vibrant health. So I've been studying Ayurveda for many decades, and then I did my master's in it, and then I did my PhD on turmeric, the spice, and became a big super fan of turmeric's power. And so I've been working with that over the last decade. I built a supplement company around it. And what I'm most proud of is I've worked with hundreds of doctors and shown them the power of turmeric for their patients.
Which we will definitely dive into because I think turmeric's had its moment probably quite a while now, like, probably last 5 to 10 years. But I think there's still some misinformation out there about, dosage and how to take it and when to take it and all of that sort of stuff. But before we dive into that, can you please tell us about your new book?
Yes, for sure. So the new book is called The Inflammation Code, and it is an Ayurvedic guidebook on how to win at inflammation. Because inflammation is a root cause issue. Most of us are struggling with it. But the issue is it's like this forest fire. It's burning underneath the surface. The fire alarms are going off, but they've all been silenced. And so we're starting to experience those punishments as we're aging. Things like brain fog, gut dysbiosis, gut issues, the gut giving us issues, um, joint pain, fatigue, headaches, just being more tired overall, aches and pains, joint pains. And so whenever I gather with my friends and they're like, oh my gosh, I guess this is just aging, I always say, no, 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 that's not aging. That's inflammaging. That is inflammation rising, and you feel like you're aging. So our job is actually to address the inflammation, and you'll see that those aging symptoms, most of them at least, will go away. And so that's the whole point of the book was I wrote the 6 pillars of Ayurveda that I've been using on my clients for over a decade and teaching them how to win an inflammation from the Ayurvedic lifestyle approach.
Mm. Well, that sounds amazing because, like you said, a lot of people do wake up in the morning and sort of say, I feel like I'm 100 today. Like my joints are aching. I slept 8 hours, but I still feel tired and I never have enough energy. So I think that's kind of a common theme. And especially for women, as they hit that sort of perimenopause and menopause stage as well, when there's, some hormone flaring up happening too, that it's a really common thing that's coming through.
Yeah, it's very true. You know, as we're aging, what I'm seeing is women who are in perimenopause, menopause, going through their decades, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, the biggest complaint coming through lines up perfectly with inflammation. And we know as we're aging, inflammation increases. We know our cellular health declines. So the body kind of comes in this to the state of oxidative stress. It comes into a state of kind of battling with itself. And so in Ayurveda, we teach, you know what? If you reduce inflammation, reduce oxidative stress, and really support the body's own healing potentials, then this dysregulation of your hormones and your gut health and everything that comes along, the body knows how to manage it. Our own body has so much intelligence around that. And the problem is our sleep, our sleep, our gut health, our diet, all of these categories, mental stress, all come in at the same time, and we're losing our resilience to tolerate it. And so ancient Ayurveda told us how to really build the patterns, the daily living practices, the self-care practices to win at that.
Mm. Well, I think, we all hear about self-care, but creating, it doesn't have to be super time consuming. It's about forming habits that can really support your health. But I still think that's something that often for women goes to the wayside. They're busy with work and kids and aging parents, and, putting yourself first, it just doesn't seem to happen.
No, it really doesn't. It's hard. And I know it's hard. I'm a mom, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a daughter, all those things. And so, what I have come to teach it as is tiny slices of your day that you use for yourself. And so, ancient Ayurveda taught us when you wake up in the morning, start by setting an intention for the day. So sometimes I jump out of bed and go running and I go, no, 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 wait, I didn't set my intention. I get back in bed for a minute and I touch the ground and touch my forehead and just tune in for 1 second. And the intention I always set is, can I please have peace? Because I always want more peace in my life. But really just taking that moment, whether it's journaling in the morning or meditation or pranayam, which is deep breathing. These are all part of a morning ritual that Ayurveda taught us to create space first, that little bit of space in the day, because that container of space we create is then something we can go back to throughout the day as we need it. Then in Ayurveda, we teach about hydrating. So start your day by hydration. We usually have a copper cup with water in it, so it remineralized overnight. And you can have any water that you want, but really hydrating first to create peristalsis, get your system moving for the day. And then we taught about doing tongue scraping after you brush your teeth. So when you go to brush your teeth, take a metal tongue scraper, preferably copper, and gently scrape the tongue 7 to 14 times. And that's your first real act of self-care. And what's beautiful is it takes less than a minute, maybe even less than 30 seconds. And when you gently scrape the tongue, you're removing all the toxins from the body that are reflected on the tongue. Just like in reflexology, all our organs are reflected on the bottom of our feet. In Ayurveda, we teach that they're reflected on the tongue. So we're removing what we call ama, or this sticky substance that forms over time in our bodies, this toxic burden. So clearing that is important. It ignites the digestive fire. It clears our taste buds, which helps them work better for the day. And so I love that as a first habit. If I do nothing else in my day, at least I did my tongue scraper. Then we teach something called oil pulling. Now, if you have kids, that one might be harder. I'm always trying to wake my kids up and get them out the door. Might be a weekend habit for you. But oil pulling just means take any food grade organic oil, put a tablespoon or two into your mouth, and start to swish it around and move it around. And what that's going to do is it's going to collect all the toxins that accumulated in your mouth overnight. And when you spit it out in the trash can, not your toilet, sink, or shower, because you don't want to clog the pipes. But clearing the oral microbiome and the oral mouth surfaces is going to support our gut health. Oral microbiome is tied to gut microbiome. And we know oral health is tied to heart health. So isn't that interesting that this simple habit from 5,000 years ago totally is validated by the sciences right now? And so those are two simple practices we can do on a daily basis that detox our bodies gently and take away that total toxic burden that can form every single day throughout the year. I agree with you, self-care is hard. And so there's a self-care habit that I created to add to those rituals called tea time is me time. This one habit is my biggest game-changing habit. I pause. I first of all set alarms on my phone. So I have an alarm for 10:30, midday, 3:30, evening to remind myself tea time for myself. And what I do is I make a delicious, in my case, cup of Ayurvedic tea, but it could be any tea. I just love all the adaptogens. And when you have that tea or coffee or whatever the beverage is for you, take it as a moment to tune in, an anchor moment or a sacred pause or a mindful moment. And ask yourself a few questions like, how am I doing today? What do I need to do to make today better? What can I do to make this week better? Have I eaten today or hydrated today? And when I take those breaks, I'm doing a couple things. One, I'm going from my sympathetic nervous system to my parasympathetic, moving into rest and digest, which some of us need a momentary reminder to even do that in our day because we're in go, go, go mode every second. Then I'm also, by sipping something hot and slowly sipping it, we're basically creating vagus nerve toning. We're allowing that vagus nerve to settle and to rest and digest. And then we're also really tuning in and going inwards and asking our intuition for answers, when it's our intuition that has the best answers for us. And so I love those as my three primary ways to practice self care. And then after that, I focus on sleep because sleep is another big self care moment.
Well, I can freely say that I tongue scrape and I oil pull, and that I think has been the biggest game changer in preventing like respiratory and getting sick and ill throughout the year. It's very, very rare now that I pick anything up and I put it down to doing that.
Nice. I love that.
And also, I love the idea of the tea time too, because I will do that. I will say more so in winter. It's
Yeah.
cold, you kind of, but in summer, I don't do a whole lot of that. Maybe because you kind of, it's hot and you don't feel like drinking tea and all the rest of it. But I still assume there's many benefits from still having that hot liquid, even though it is summer.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, sometimes I'm drinking my tea and I'm sweating, and I'm like, this is so weird. It's so hot. But the habit is still the habit, and I need the habit for me to take the mental break in the moment, so I do it. But yes, it does feel more aligned in the winter time, but I need the habit time still in the summer to do it. So it just depends on you.
And I know in your book too that you dive into the mental sort of inflammation side. You touched on it earlier, sort of brain fog and headaches and things. But I do think that's kind of a side that people, they just, put it down to being tired or being busy. But as you said, inflammation is often the underlying cause.
Correct. So in the book, I talked a lot about inflammation because we know acute inflammation happens, the body's going to respond. We underestimate what chronic low grade persistent inflammation is and what it's doing inside the body. It really is this forest fire causing damage. And so I wrote the whole book about how to, align your circadian rhythm and know your constitution and address gut health. And I talked about super spices and self-care for detox. And then when I got to the end, I thought, some of us put so much energy and intensity into our health that we almost cause stress on top of ourselves for not even being good enough at our health practices. That's one category of us. You could almost call us orthorexia, like overdoing it with our health. Then there's a whole big category of us as humans who are just so stressed on a daily basis. Life's list never lets us go, responsibilities, outside forces, and stressors. And I think what we underestimate is stress alone causes inflammation. And if we're not going to put down that burden of stress ever, then we're going to constantly cause physical inflammation through mental inflammation. That term came to me, and I thought, God, how beautifully does that explain the problem? We as a society are mentally inflamed, and we're not seeing that it's depleting us, it's damaging our digestive fire, our ability to process and absorb anything. We're kind of overloaded with social media and the 24-hour news cycle, and everyone's feeding us only the negative side of things. How often are we focusing on the positive side of things? And then how often are we generating those feelings of happiness and healthiness? Are we instead just so occupied with that negative? And so in Ayurveda, we teach that that digestive fire is the center to all health. So our job is to honor it and guard it. So not only from a food perspective, but you are digesting your thoughts, your emotions, and that of anything you allow in. And so that's where mental inflammation became really important to me and reminded me we have to be guards at the doors of our entire life in terms of what we let in, because we need to be able to have that processing power in that digestive system. And if our digestive system is so dysregulated, we're never going to produce this byproduct that we talk about in Ayurveda called ojas. Ojas is like this vitality, this nectar, this joy, this vibrancy that we can all have. So anytime that's missing in your life, it's good to pause and say, you know what? Is it mental inflammation? Is it my gut health? Is it my circadian rhythm? Like, where am I off? Where am I allowing maybe too many things to come in? And I don't have the energy to process it all.
Mm. And we were just having this conversation with clients the other day with, a lot happening around the world when you tune into the news, a majority of it, it's not uplifting at all. Do you know what I mean? You kind of watch it and you feel despair. You think nothing that I can do, and you finish watching the news and you feel way worse than what you did prior to. And we were all talking about how we've had to set boundaries about how much news we consume, when we're consuming news, and what and almost weigh it up and sort of see what is relevant, what is a need to know and what is an okay to just put to the side.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I have noticed that social media for me, I have to unfollow so many people and things because it's so negative. There's only so much I can process. We are going through a moment in our lives where the news is so negative. And so I really stand guard at the content I consume. I won't watch TV shows that are scary or negative or going to cause stress on my system. I won't watch the news. I'll unfollow people and situations and news channels on social media, whatever it takes. Because in my case, I'm teaching a system of health. I'm trying to impart health and share health with the world. That requires me to hold my energetic field and hold my energy as white light and pure and good. I can't involve too much negativity into that if that's my mission. And so I think it's so important that we acknowledge like where are these things coming into our life? It's not just food. It could be, potato chips, and it could be gluten and dairy. It could be that. It could be the French fries, right? So for some it's the diet. But are we actually just consuming so much negativity and then eating to comfort ourselves? In Ayurveda, we teach that sweet foods reduce anxiety and reduce that feeling of anxiety and stress. Well, are you a chocoholic or a sweetaholic right after those moments? And so I caught that for myself when my kids were little. I would fight with my kids. We'd argue about something. They don't want to eat this. They don't want to do this. I would try to stuff a lot of healthy things in them and they would not listen. And then I would go walking into the pantry, reaching for the dark chocolate almonds. And I thought, oh, this is your thing. You're stressed and you're going to go self-soothe. Let's just catch that in between the moment, and your new options are coconut water, tea, or something else. Maybe a walk in nature. Go take a walk around the block. And so I think that's where in the health space we have such an opportunity right now to say, hey, society is inflammatory. This moment in time in the world is inflammatory. That could be true for the next few decades. Who knows? But why don't we right now understand where we need to stand guard for our health, for our peace, for our whole energy field, and then walk from that place and build a life from that place.
I love that. And I think it's, everybody listening can take something away from that, and whether or not it's thinking about what boundaries you have around, being exposed to negativity or the news or whatever it may be. And a bit like the self-care practices you were sort of saying before, it is a type of self-care practice by in putting those boundaries in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, I'd love to segue to the food and the spices. And I think a lot of people are sometimes scared of using spices and turmeric because they don't know how much to use and, it might be overwhelming. So, where can somebody start if they're sort of looking at starting to add in some spices into their diet?
Sure. So, out of the spices and super spices in Ayurveda, we love reaching for some of our key ones that offer so many benefits. One would be ginger. Ginger is a very powerful anti-inflammatory. It's so good for the gut digestive fire and our digestive system. We know for many it helps with nausea, but it's really so powerful for the gut. And so I love using ginger. I can have ginger lemon tea in the morning. You can add ginger to tea any time of day. You can add more into your food in fresh form or dry form. It goes really well into Mexican food, any Asian type of dish. So that's kind of an easy one to start with because we know what ginger tastes like. Turmeric is similar. It's very anti-inflammatory, good for so many things. And I'll get into turmeric in a minute because I have a lot I can say on it. But it has a more nutty flavor. So when you are using turmeric as a spice, start with half a teaspoon. I don't think that's going to change the taste of anything too much, but always make sure you're adding black pepper or a healthy fat to increase the absorption, because the black pepper will increase that absorption by 2,000%, and healthy fat will help it cross the blood-brain barrier for neuroinflammation and neurocognitive things. So that's about the turmeric piece. Coriander or cilantro is a heavy metal detoxer, so bringing more cilantro into your life can be part of a daily detox rhythm, which is very nice. We love cumin seeds in Ayurveda. Cumin helps you digest your food better. So anytime we're going to cook lentils, beans, or any hard to digest vegetable, first we always saute our whole cumin seeds and we let them start to dance in the pan and release their aromas and benefits, and then we're ready to start cooking with them. So anytime you're going through life and you're like, oh, I want to eat these leftovers, heat cumin first underneath that. Or anytime you're going to eat something hard to digest, add cumin to it. So cumin to me is like another big powerhouse. So I think of spices as bring them into your life. We're living a pretty protein forward lifestyle right now. Everyone's obsessed with protein. So why not bring spices in? It helps you digest them better, and it changes up the flavors a little bit, adds a little more spice into your life. Spices are not necessarily spicy. They just have a lot of great flavor. And so in Indian cuisine, any Eastern Asian cuisine, even Mexican cuisine, we use a lot of these spices more. So maybe look up a great recipe that has a couple and start to test what cooking with those spices look like. My personal favorite is turmeric because my entire PhD dissertation was on turmeric. And I love it because it's such a powerful anti-inflammatory. It impacts those top inflammatory markers like NF-kappa B, TNF alpha, interleukin 6. And so because it's affecting those master switches of inflammation, it affects all the downstream ones as well. And so I think that's why it's one of the most studied plant botanicals out of Ayurveda because of its anti-inflammatory, antioxidant properties. It's also antiviral, antibacterial, antifungal. So those of us who like to really defend and guard our immune system, it's helpful for that. Anti-candida, anti-H. pylori, helps with the gut barrier lining, which I always need more leaky gut support. It also helps with kind of killing off anything that doesn't belong. Turmeric's this ultimate janitor that cleans house. So it really impacts our zombie cells, senolytic cells, malignant cells, causes cell apoptosis, cells that don't belong in the body. Curcumin and turmeric will clean them out. And then it's also good for neurocognitive, anything like beta amyloid plaques that accumulate, tau tangles. It creates neurogenesis and mitogenesis, which to me is exciting. I want more brain cells and more energy as I age, so I take my turmeric for that too. So it does a lot. It does that and a lot more. But what I like people to know is out of the entire turmeric plant, only 3 to 5% of it is the curcuminoids. And those curcuminoids are the most effective at reducing inflammation. And so we want to make sure that we're taking the curcuminoids to get the benefit, not just regular turmeric powder. Regular turmeric powder in cooking is still beneficial with the black pepper healthy fat, but many of us are seeking this like very high level benefit. So it's worth it then to take the extract. And in my case, in my formulas, I put that curcumin and curcuminoids at the exact same ratio to mimic Mother Nature and at a very high level of potency. So just make sure when you're buying your supplements, you're buying it from a reputable source that really cares about delivering really powerful results, potent results.
Yep. Well, that was going to be my next question because there are a lot of different supplements out there. And, is there a big difference if someone's like, oh, I do struggle to kind of cook from scratch and add spices and things? Is it still fine to get that curcumin coming from the supplement rather than the whole food source?
I'm Indian, so it's inevitably going to be in my food, but I never think of my turmeric in my food as being nearly enough to battle the level of inflammation that we are struggling with as a society. So I'm a big fan of supplementation. I have been since I did that science research into turmeric. I think extracting the curcuminoids and using that to support ourselves on our inflammation journey is very, very, very powerful. Do we have to take turmeric every day forever? No. That's why I wrote the whole book. I thought, let me teach everyone this anti-inflammatory lifestyle so that they don't have to take a supplement. But we are living through a time right now that's quite inflammatory. So to me, it's the best way to naturally reduce inflammation while also then working on all the lifestyle pieces.
And there's often, there's two things that I hear from my clients when it comes to turmeric, if they're taking a supplement. The first one is sometimes people say they get an upset stomach from taking turmeric. Can you
Yeah.
kind of delve into that a bit?
Sure. So I have seen that over the years, especially in certain populations. So my turmeric supplement that I built is very potent. There's big variations in qualities of supplements out there. So many are owned by multinational brands who just don't care about quality and potency. We know that, at least here in the United States, when supplements are sold at the big box retailer shelves, I think it was the Wall Street Journal who third party tested them. They took them off the shelf and they saw that over 75% of supplements on those big box retailer shelves didn't have the active ingredient at the level stated or the active ingredient at all. So we're having a lot of issues with buying supplements off Amazon or in stores. And so I love reaching into the class of supplements that are sold in functional medicine, integrative medicine, and these types of practices, because then practitioners know what works and what doesn't. They're pretty clear. They see those impacts in their patients. So my product is carried in orthopedics and functional medicine offices. And so very early on, I got calls from the orthopedic office saying, my patient got GI upset. What is happening? And I said, okay, let's start over. When you take a very potent turmeric, you should start with a meal. So I tell this to everyone because the majority of people who are taking turmeric from me are probably past the age of 60 because most of them are calling me for joint pain. That's what they're reaching for it for. And so what I tell them is start with a meal, start with one a day. Ease in because it is a very strong spice and we're talking about a very strong extract here. And most people, at least here in the West, don't eat spices at all. Like they're salt and pepper people. They're not necessarily like turmeric, ginger, and all these crazy spicy herbs in their life people. And so I've always started that way now, and now we're fine. It's like take it with lunch. Take one for a few days. After 3 days, then you can increase to twice a day with food. Then after a couple days, then you can take it without food because it's built to be taken without food. But sometimes it can hit us a little strong because it is a new introduction to the system.
Yeah. And then the second thing sometimes I hear, especially when it comes to like joint pain, because that's again mainly what my clients are taking it for, is
Yeah.
they take it for a period of time and I'll be like, oh, how are you going with the turmeric? And they're like, I just don't think it's doing anything. And they can't really work out if it's made a difference or not. So does that
Sure.
come back to, potentially other inflammation factors that are happening or maybe leaky gut being present and it not being able to do its work?
Good question. So for over a decade, people have come up to me and told me all sorts of things about turmeric. Many people came up to me if they were like in the yoga community and they'd say, I juice my turmeric. And then a lot of people met me and said, I sprinkled turmeric on my chicken and all my eggs and I'm taking my turmeric. And I'm like, okay, that's not enough either. And then there's a crew who would take supplements and the majority of people who take supplements would say, I take my turmeric, but I don't feel anything taking it. And that's been true across thousands of people for a decade now. I've heard that. And what I always tell people is look, turmeric is meant to cause a change in the body. When built potently and properly, it will cause a change. Will all of us actively feel it? Not necessarily. So I don't actively have joint pain on any given day. So I'm not a good tester of did I feel it, but I know what it does for my immune system and how well I've been able to fight off all these viruses that people get. So I use it more for that. And if I do have aches and pains, I'm taking it for that as well. And then I know the preventive benefits. So I like it as my insurance policy. But yeah, I mean, most turmeric supplements that people are taking, if you really look at the label, oftentimes the label says curcuma longa, 500 milligrams. That just means regular turmeric powder because curcuma longa is the plant name. A lot of times it says turmeric extract, but it doesn't tell you the potency. It doesn't say curcumin standardized to 95%, so there's no standardization there. Many supplements forget the black pepper or the healthy fat, which I think is insane. How could you do that? It's a turmeric supplement. At least build it to absorb. And so because there's so many games played in the space, I find that's usually reason number one. Now, if you have a group of patients who are taking turmeric regularly and they're like, I don't feel it, what a lot of people do is they leave town, they'll forget my supplement, and then they will start calling and texting. And they're like, oh my God, 7 days without it. And now I know what it was doing for me. Now I feel old and stiff and I feel completely different in my body. And I just didn't know that I was feeling better. So that's usually a test I tell people is just come off it for a week and be aware of how you feel. And that might create enough change that you'll start to feel that difference. But I do truly believe that oftentimes it comes down to quality. Like find a really high quality, potent company that actually cares about delivering the result to people. And then that's the one that where you really should feel that difference.
Mm. Well, I'm kind of the same boat as you. I take turmeric, but I don't necessarily have joint pain or anything to notice it, like, oh, I didn't take it, and I've noticed I've woken up with joint pain. But I know for my overall health, I generally feel, that I have energy, I feel focused and switched on. So overall for my health with inflammation wise and stuff, it's still good as a supportive, supplement.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things we take for our daily support, right? I take my vitamin D, I take my probiotic, I take my turmeric. There's some things that I consider my essential mandatory group of things because their power outweighs whether I feel it or not. I know that I need those on board. And so I put turmeric in that class because if you just look at the science of it, it's so powerful on the anti-aging front, antioxidant front, brain protective front, gut protective front. And those are the things I value the most when it comes to my health.
Mm. And the other thing I think, that's important to remember is that not one thing is a magic bullet. So if you are, in a very inflamed state, maybe you're not eating well, you're eating inflammatory foods, you're not sleeping, you have high stress, just taking turmeric is not going to undo everything else.
No, it's not. It's not. And that's why I sat down and wrote a book on it. I had been working with enough clients where I realized sleep is a huge deal. A lot of people are not sleeping well. And Ayurveda teaches us we need to sleep from 10 to 2 on the circadian clock or we're not going to clear inflammation. So I really wanted to kind of put down on paper, hey, the circadian clock really matters. Us living in alignment with our circadian lifestyle, circadian season matters. And so that's one key piece. You're right. If your sleep is not good, you will have issues with inflammation. Then the chronic stress piece. Most of us are under stress. But then do we have practices to build stress resilience? Do we have practices to decompress from that stress and just put it all down for a minute? That's where tea time is me time came from. Another one I have is called collect peace. I'm not a good meditator, but I am good at walking in nature. So I just make sure if I have 20 minutes, I just put my running shoes on and I go walk outside. If I don't want to walk out in public on the street, I'll just walk around my pool in the back in circles. Like whatever it takes to go breathe in nature, move in nature, because that will calm my nervous system down. That'll put me back into rest and digest mode, which in my own nature might not be natural. It might be that I'm constantly thinking and on the go.
Mm.
And then, like you said, diet. We can't eat a horrible diet and then expect turmeric to outdo it. We have to have the awareness around what am I eating? When am I eating it? How am I eating it? Am I putting those health practices in place to nourish myself and support myself? And then turmeric is that adjunct, supplemental, additional support on top of that. So yeah, it is about the whole pie. I do find nowadays we want the one pill for the problem, and one pill can't do it all. I wish it could. I wish it could, but it can't do all of it. It can't outdo if the weight of our health practices are really outweighing it. So that's where I love teaching Ayurveda. Ayurveda builds this rhythm into our lives on our circadian rhythm and on our health that help us win at inflammation, that help us win at bringing in more vitality, but also as women, help us feel more whole and nourished and grounded. And I think that's a big piece of what we're craving nowadays. We want to feel that way, but maybe we're reaching for the tools that used to support us but don't support us now. I know for me, back when I was in my 30s, I could just go to HIIT training or I go out for a drink with my girlfriends, and that was my letting off of steam. Now in my mid 40s, those things don't serve me. So I had to build a whole new toolkit. Now it's walk in nature. Tea time is me time. Maybe call a friend to get that time, but alcohol doesn't serve and HIIT training doesn't serve. So as we're aging, we have to keep figuring out and calibrating to what are the next practices we need to bring in, self-care tools or healthy habits that really support us.
Mm. And when it comes to sleep, I think, as you were sort of saying, women as they sort of hit their mid 40s and perimenopause is kicking in, one of the big things I hear is, Kate, I would love to be able to sleep through the night, but I just can't. Like, I just really struggle. What, support or info do you have to help those ladies?
You know, sleep is an obsession of mine and it hurts my feelings when people cannot sleep. I'm always like, what? How? How can you not sleep? And then, of course, I hit my mid 40s and experienced it and was like, oh my gosh, that's nuts that we can wake up at 3 in the morning, mind starts racing, and we cannot go back to sleep. So for me, I sit down with clients and say a couple things. One, how much are you exercising? A lot of times life gets busy, we put exercise on the side, and we don't realize how much exercise contributes to sleep. And so I have many women who in their 50s, 60s, and 70s were like, yeah, I just, I stopped working out. I had surgery. I had whatever happened. And so when I bring back exercise or walking, sleep comes back online. So that's like the easy, cheapest, free way to fix sleep is move more and make the body physically tired. So it's tired enough to sleep. Because a lot of us are wired but tired, and we're not acknowledging and understanding that if you work through the physical body first, Sometimes that will allow the mental body to be processed through and allow us to sleep. So that's number one. Number two, when is dinner happening? A lot of people eat too late. In Ayurveda, we want dinner done 3 hours before bedtime. That's a circadian clock recommendation. So in the biohacking space, wellness, longevity space, everyone's talking circadian rhythm. Ayurveda said 5,000 years ago, there's a circadian clock. We must live by it for optimal health. And to defy it will create disease and problems. So when I say sleep 10 to 2 on that circadian clock, 10 to 2 is pitta time of day. It's when these fires come out to clear the lymphatic system, clear inflammation, and rejuvenate the body. But when you want to get good sleep that's useful at 10, you actually need to cut dinner by 7. No munching, no snacking, no Netflix and chill, and all these habits that we have nowadays. We just take some discipline. The other night I watched a movie on Netflix and then I wanted a snack and I said, you may not have one. That's forbidden. Go make some tea for yourself. And so it's about that reminder of, do you want that great sleep and do you want it to serve you? And then finally, I do reach for some tools. So it's like the lifestyle piece is always number one. Let's approach it from there. And then I'm a big fan of what's the tool I can use today that hopefully I can let go of tomorrow, but let me use it in the here and now to get to the finish line. And so that's why I developed a tea called Deep Sleep Tea, because it has ashwagandha, brahmi, cardamom, osmanthus, like these ingredients from Ayurveda that help settle the mind, the nervous system, and digestive system for a better night's sleep. So I use that as my sleep hygiene ritual. You can use any sleep tea. There's chamomile teas and lavender teas, great teas out there in the world. But I love the idea of that sleep tea an hour before bed to calm down the system and really remind the system it's bedtime. We are going to bed. That's the next thing we are doing on this list. So tea time is important to me. I'm in perimenopause. I needed progesterone. So progesterone was wonderful. I take that. So I love fusing my East and West boxes. So progesterone's part of my nightly ritual and deep sleep tea. And then I created a sleep gummy as well because I always want to create those tools for people. The sleep gummy has GABA L-theanine, and it's like a simple solution and 3 milligrams melatonin. But to bring that on, some people take 2 and then they get that full night of sleep. Or some people wake up in the middle of the night and take 1 and then they get 2.5 to 3 hours of sleep. And so if it's not this gummy, it could be any product around sleep. But I highly recommend figuring out what is that tool you can reach for so that if you do wake up in the night, you can reach and grab that one thing, use it, put yourself back to bed, and get the rest of your sleep so you have that energy the next day to work out, move, eat well, and all the good things.
Well, that's it. It's kind of all interlinked, isn't it? Because if you don't get a good night's sleep, you don't feel like working out. You often don't, therefore, eat as well. You tend to reach for the sugary, high energy dense foods to kind of give you that boost, but then that crashes your energy and then, you sit and you don't have any energy. So I think if you can start the night before and focus on that sleep, then you're actually going to be way better off the next day with all your other practices as well.
Exactly, exactly. We're living in these cycles, we're living in these rhythms, and nobody is perfect. I definitely every other day have to converse with myself and say, sleep is a priority. It's not Instagram and it's not work, and you better put that down. And so I literally have to tell myself that. And so what's easier for me is set alarms. I set an alarm for tea time is me time. I set alarms for high tea and snack at 3:30. I have one at 8 o'clock that says time to wind down. I have one at 9 p.m. that says time for self-care. And those are my reminders to myself that, hey, the day is winding down. You said sleep was a priority. So what are we doing here? Are we going to keep working? Or are we going to go shift into evening self-care rituals? And so I love to highlight that for people is like our mind is going to keep going, but where can we put the stop gaps to support ourselves?
Mm. And we often do it for our kids, like we create, rituals before bed, it's a bath and it's read a book and, we have these habits in place for them. And then often it's like, oh, we're adult. We don't need to do any of that anymore, but we actually will function better if we do.
Exactly. We need to program our own mind. Oh, she's closing the blinds. She's getting in bed for tea. I've got 20 minutes. She's going to go to bed, and that's the plan. There's no other plan here. No new ideas can come in. And so I think it is so important to be ritualistic in our lives. And those rituals can be really enjoyable. They can be delicious. They can be fun. They can be self-nourishing instead of a chore. And so nowadays we talk so much about habits and habit stacking. And I know I have a lot of health habits and I know I demand them of myself. But the moment I turn some of them into rituals that are serving me, like loose tea and brewing that tea for a few minutes, or my walks in nature that are for me to breathe and drop into my parasympathetic and just chill and fill my cup, the better I feel.
Mm. And if there's, a listener that's listening in going, I'm exhausted, I feel bloated, I've got brain fog. So clearly, they're like, I've got inflammation happening with my body, but I'm a bit overwhelmed and I'm not sure where to start. Where should they sort of take the first step?
There's a lot of ways to go with that. I would say one easy thing is focus on sleep because sleep is free, it's easy, and it's somewhat inactive. It's just laying in a bed and sleeping on time, but doing the work it takes to get that good sleep. So I love sleep first because then you wake up rested and you start to build that battery of energy that we need to do all the other good habits. So that's where I would start. Another easy one is cut one of the top 5 inflammatory foods in your life. And letting one of those go will let go of the inflammatory burden. So it could be alcohol, could be sugar, could be gluten or dairy, or for some it's even red meat, depending on who you are, if that's hard to digest for your system. And then we can keep going down that line. Peanuts have mold, like processed foods, seed oils. But I usually pick from those top 5. And a lot of my clients, if they just give up sugar for a week or two, the smoke kind of clears, the brain clears, and they feel better. Or gluten is a culprit for many, or dairy is kind of weighing them down. And so if we can cut one food out just for a week or two, usually 14 days is better, then all of a sudden the body might have that moment to really heal, clear inflammation, feel better, and then you get that energy back. And that energy will become this self-propelling energy that allows you to then focus on sleep, focus on moving, and those kinds of things.
Well, I know with my clients, they're often very resistant to have to give up something. And like you said, they only want to give it up for like 3 days. Oh, I can go
Yeah.
3 days. And I'm like, well, it's going to take a bit longer than that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is hard. Food is hard because no one wants to give it up. I mean, usually you have to drop them into a much bigger group program and the group dynamic supports and I've had many people say to me, I don't need to give up gluten. And I'm like, I said that too. I totally said that. And now you can't get me to touch gluten because I know what the price is of eating that one thing. And so in a group setting, I have had women drop gluten. They're like, oh my God, I can think again. I don't have brain fog. I don't want to nap every afternoon. This is insane. So yeah, it is the tougher one, but it gives such huge benefits.
And also, I think, for me too, I don't drink alcohol very often anymore. More just so because I don't really, mainly I started because I noticed that my sleep was interrupted. I didn't have as much energy the next day. I just didn't feel great for it. And I didn't really love it that much. So I really wasn't missing anything. And now, very occasionally, I'll have a glass or something because my brain goes, "Oh, that will taste amazing." And then when I do have that glass, I'm like, "Oh, I really wasn't missing anything. It doesn't really taste amazing. That's why I don't really drink anymore."
Right. No, it's true. I mean, in perimenopause, that's a huge complaint is that all of a sudden we're not tolerating alcohol as well. It trashes our sleep. It makes us exhausted the next day. And so the price is too high. And then what's interesting is socially, even I'm not sure if it's happening in Australia, but here in the West, there's a big movement around less alcohol and what's the point and all of that. So dry January has turned into like dry all year. And it's an interesting moment. And any of us in the health space know, and finally the news has published, it is poison. It's not good for us. It's only harmful. And so it's kind of having an interesting moment around like, where do you want to stand on this? And I'm the same way. I'm very occasional now. Maybe before it was like twice a month, and now I'm like once a month. It has to be really amazing. It has to be a really good reason. Otherwise, the price I pay on sleep and the next day is just not worth it. It's too inflammatory to the system.
And, before we wrap up, I wanted to find out, a lot of people, when they think about writing a book, there's usually a process. Like you might think about it for a while, but you'll have a why. So can you share with us, what was your why and your process of writing the book?
Yeah, so I would say I've actually written this book twice. 2 summers in a row, I wrote this book in different forms, and I kept throwing it away because every time I wrote it, I was like, okay, I've written this book. I know it'll change women's lives. At the time, I was seeing so many different women and clients who would find me and say, I'm suffering with infertility. I'm suffering with an autoimmune condition. I don't know what's wrong with my body. I don't feel like myself. I don't have the energy or major hair loss. There were lots of different issues I would see. And I kept thinking, this comes down to the 6 pillars of Ayurveda. Like, no one knows the Ayurveda lifestyle, but the Ayurveda lifestyle is so powerful. If everyone else had it and lived it the way I get to live it, they would get to feel like I feel, and they'd get to feel the benefits of this and what my clients come to feel once we've worked together. And so I wrote the book twice, threw it in the trash. And then when Hey Hal said, we would love for you to write a book on Ayurveda for us, I was like, okay, so now it's time to write this thing. And so I sat down, and in 2 weeks, I locked myself in a room and just poured into a document and got 50,000 words down. And I think it's because I had already written it twice. I had already kind of pulled together all my stories around my clients that I wanted to share, that I had permission to share. And so the book got onto paper, and then it was the editing process, which is quite long, and the citations process, which is, I think, longer than my PhD took me. Like, citations is a very tough process to cite everything you're studying and quoting in a book. But yeah, it was quite a journey to do that. I'd say for another year and a half after writing it. And then it just went to print a couple months ago, and it's coming out in the world now, birthed and ready. So it's really exciting. It's a much longer labor of love journey, I think, than anyone realizes. But once you do it, you're like, oh, okay, people are going to read my work. People are going to be impacted, which is so exciting.
Well, it's super exciting, isn't it? That you're changing people's lives.
Yeah, I love books. I mean, to me, so many people in our space have impacted me through their teachings online, through their podcasts, through their books. So it's just, we're all lifting up the planet with our own voices around health. And so I just feel very lucky that we're living through this time that we have these spaces and platforms to do it.
Amazing. Well, congratulations on the book. I am going to jump on and get myself a copy straight away. But where can our listeners reach out, connect with you, order the book, and find out more?
For sure. So the book is available at theinflammationcode.com, and that's where you can find the book and all the bonuses that come with it. I'm including like my whole 14-day challenge with it and everything. My website is my name, shivanigupta.com, where I have my podcast, my master classes, and everything there, my guidebooks. And then my supplement company is fusionaryformulas.com, fusing east and west. So Fusionary has a special discount code for your listeners. Kate Boyle 15 will give them 15% off.
Amazing. Well, we'll link that all up in the show notes too, so listeners can head across there, grab their discount, grab the book. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. You are such a wealth of information that I love having you on. And the way that you convey that information too is easy to understand, it's relatable, and part of the reason why I think you are so amazing and so successful in the world of health.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.